Okay.
We are not here to have a fireside chat.
Okay, so now you start.
No.
This interview is on you.
No, it's not. It's on both of us.
So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
This is going to be the interview for the tech position. So I'm going to let my colleague from HR start the interview, and then
You're the HR.
we'll continue with the technical part.
Yes. Now I'm going to be HR technical part in accordance to his desires. Okay, that's not going to happen. We are not here to have a job interview. We are here to discuss some of the things that happened over the course of the past
6 years.
6 years since you started, let's say, studying here with us. Okay, first year we did not hang out all that much because you were doing the first year courses which we were not involved with, but later on we started hanging out quite a bit more outside of the regular education hours as well. It was, on top of that, it was Corona time as well for a couple of those years. And we're going to definitely circle back to that part of the conversation because I think a couple of years after that, you probably have some insights into what was happening with both you and your head and your work and whatever the hell happened back then. We do too, as well. We tried to make a lot of changes in our education process while that was happening. So that's also, let's say, a partial topic of today's episode of That IT Show podcast. But without further ado, let's just roll the intro and then let's have a start.
Okay.
Start.
So let's start from the beginning. Where are the two other guys?
They're both home, probably, hopefully, relaxing from their very
Stressful day today.
and extensive day working at, I think it's Deutsche Telekom.
Yeah.
Yes,
Both
so
of them.
I'm referring to the first episode that we did. Was it the first?
No,
or the
that was the
second
first
one?
live episode.
The first live episode that we did when the three of you were presenting the Red Hat Architect program and went through the all the niceties of how you got along and how you got your education carved out for you here in algebra. But from what I gather, from what Veteran is trying to tell us, is we are here right now to try to talk about the wider picture of all of this.
Yeah, today's episode is all about you. So we are not the topic of the conversation. Just like on the circle of your life, we are like on that circle somewhere in some positions. Circle referring to time, this specific occasion, but you are the primary suspect. And you said you felt like a suspect because of the organization of the studio as well. So we might as well accommodate that feeling that you have.
And on the other hand, if any of the recruiters are going to watch this, because they are, when they are Googling you, they're going to find this. So this is the first part of your interview that is going to be online forever.
Yes.
So just to make it clear.
We are not making any kind of pressure on you.
Yeah,
putting in
this reduces stress.
This is stress. There are going to be no coding questions today. We are just going to talk about
how you feel.
stress, how you
I
feel.
mean, I was hoping for some.
No. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, but there's actually a scene in one of the Star Trek episodes when Spock movies, when Spock comes back to life, and the machine that he's using to train asks him, "How do you feel?" And he's like, "That's a completely illogical question." But that's what we're doing today, because we like logic as much as
So
possible.
I'm going to refrain myself from mentioning avocado. I'm not going to talk about any of the usual things that I do. I'm going to just start from the start and let Vedran do the actual introduction. So we know why you came here. We know that you got the inspiration to do things that you did with your life based on what you saw here. Because in the previous episode you were trying to make, what is it, €5 an hour to get a new mobile
Three
phone.
and a half.
3.5 euros an hour. And then you suddenly decided to make yourself the guy that you are today. So an established security expert that is doing the
Cool acronyms.
cool things with the Kubernetes, OpenShift, OpenStack, and whatever. I'm right now making things up because I actually don't know which technologies you're using on your work, but it doesn't matter. Since, and this is not sarcasm, you moved quite a lot from 5 years ago to where we are today. And this is partly because of us and partly because of you. I'm interested in the you part. I know what we do. We basically try to push everybody to do their best. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we do okay, sometimes we excel, and we are happy with you. So now, without any pressure, how do you feel about your path from the guy who's trying to buy a mobile phone to the guy who actually does something?
It doesn't even feel like this. It was in the same life. It feels like it was some previous life, honestly, but it does feel accomplished, does feel fulfilling, which is, in retrospect, something that I was obviously aiming for. At the time, I did not notice. I was like anyone who just started their career. I was trying to get more and more money. I mean, that's the only reason why I started working, was to have money. And one thing led to another. I am now in a very comfortable position, both financially and privately, and I can lead a normal life, which wasn't the case back then when I was working for, as you mentioned, 3.5 euros an hour, which is completely ridiculous when you take into account the amount and the complexity of work that I did.
Yes, and this is the usual thing that people do with interns. And what I wanted to touch on is to give a wider concept, because we know what we are talking about, but probably people who are watching this don't know the whole history of this. Here in Rancho, we have the system administration, system engineering, system administration and engineering courses, and you were part of them. And when you started, you were basically a Windows guy who was trying to...
No.
Nope.
He was a network guy.
I was a networking guy.
I'm trying to avoid this, but okay, you were a networking guy. If you are proud of it, I'm completely
Super
on the
proud,
side.
actually.
You need to own that, yes.
Yes, you need to own that, because he doesn't know anything about the networking. This is
Yeah.
the thing
And
that
he hates
actually
it.
one of the students said to him. One of the students said to him that he doesn't know anything about the networking, and
Tabula rasa.
this is something that is a running joke when it comes to networking courses. But let's put this aside. So when we started, you were here to try to get education in the system administration, and you were probably thinking about networking. What switched you to where you are today? Because you went from networking to Windows, and then you suddenly realized that Linux kind of sort of makes sense. So what happened? What was the switch?
What was the switch?
Yes.
The networking switch.
Fiber channel switch.
3650. Okay, but what was the actual reason why you switched?
What was the layer 3 switch?
I can tell you this. The reason I sort of fell in love with networking is because it was the first time I got familiar with something that was so ridiculously complex. I understood immediately that I could put my entire life into this and never know everything about it. And so it's a complete rabbit hole that you can take on for decades. Then,
Okay, but so it's cooking. So everything that you try to master is going to be something that you are going to never finish learning. So networking was part of it. But why did you switch to the Linux?
First Windows.
firstly, Windows, it wasn't actually Windows per se, it was more or less PowerShell. It was scripting. And again, I got familiar with an amazing tool that felt like programming, which I did in high school, just as an introduction. It felt like programming, but the feedback was much better. When you program in high school, it's usually those silly console programs with like, okay, you create a class of a car or a vehicle, and then you learn about inheritance by creating a subclass called car and a van and a train. That's a subclass of a vehicle, and that's the usual example you always go through. But it wasn't satisfying enough for me, I guess. The result of a good PowerShell script was a lot more satisfying to me than the result of a good program in C or C++ was.
So basically, real world implications of what the PowerShell actually does.
Exactly.
Because whatever you're doing in BASIC or Pascal or C Sharp or whatever is more or less usually abstract thing. And then when you're doing something in PowerShell, you are doing an actual thing in the real world, and you are seeing the results immediately usually.
Exactly. When you configure an entire Active Directory, domain using PowerShell, you can test this out. You can put it into context of a small or a large company. You can see how this thing works in the real world. Although I'm still chasing that same high I got from the first time I managed to draw a house in Logo. I mean, it's cool, but it's not really that applicable to anything.
I think you should switch to FreeBSD and try to make it work.
Maybe I should.
I think this is the thing that
Future
you should.
path.
Maybe I should.
So basically, what I'm getting from you is that you got the drive to do things because they immediately made sense. Networking is, for me, too simple. Now, I'm not saying that networking per se is simple, but networking is sort of like mathematics. Switches are basically stupid. If you give them, you have to give them straight directions or commands or whatever. So a string of things that they need to do, and they're going to do it. PowerShell is much more flexible, and this makes it interesting. And
I think that it was something else as well. I think it was the larger part of the story, which oftentimes we kind of forget about in college education. The larger story of where this can be used in general, not only in a specific applicable case. Because one of the things that both you and I actually had many discussions about, and I had that discussion with all our previous students as well. Our job at hand is not only to give them the knowledge to do a PowerShell script. Let's use that as a metaphor. Our task is also to kind of tell them the story of why that's important. Why that's important in a larger sense. What do they get out of this?
Exactly.
What's the payout?
It
doesn't have to be a money payout. It has to be some form of a payout.
And that's usually a huge part of why people hate mathematics. What's the one single example that mathematicians or math teachers always give a practical example when explaining a concept? What is the concept and the example? I'm sure you know this. You've been through this in high school.
which one?
Can you remember?
Honestly, no, because my first interest in actually learning how mathematics works was when I was learning orders.
Orders.
Yes, because this was the thing that this was the first thing in mathematics that actually made sense and became not analytics but synthesis of something.
For me, it was equations.
It's actually integrals.
Okay.
When you learn integrals, the teacher always explains, well, we use this to
Calculate the area below the curve.
Below the curve. And you immediately understand, okay, yeah, that's completely useful for people that measure land. You always have curved parts of land, and you need to know how to measure their area.
And then you realize that they're not using integrals at all.
Okay, they're not using integrals per se, but you can use, it's one of the tools you can use to get that job done. Everything else, most of the time, they leave it out.
Yes, because they have to, because it's more or less strictly abstract, and there is no way to explain orders, and there is no way to explain exponential functions and so on, because
There is. There always is.
there always is. But when they are dealing with the limited amount of knowledge that they have with the students,
Metaphors don't necessarily always
Metaphors
work.
don't
That's
work.
the
This is the
problem.
first thing because you're too young, and the other thing is that almost none of the teachers go the extra mile to try to explain to people.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this video in the description. Yesterday, I posted something about the current. If you see the video about the electrons, how the electrons
Electrons,
goes, this was one of the most amazing educational videos that I have ever seen because it covers a topic that I was learning for the last 30 years. And this is the first time that somebody actually managed to explain
The magic of
magic of electrons inside inside a piece of wire in a way that was completely relatable without using any different any complex equations. He could have introduced the equations because they are equations that are trying to explain how this thing works, but he was basically able to go from a single point of a single measuring point for the voltage to describing how the electrons move through the wire. And this is one of those things that I immensely like about what is happening right now in the education. Because you can always find the guy who is willing to do the extra thing to explain to you all the concepts.
And the visualization of that is super important. Not only talk, chat.
I had the privilege of having an amazing teacher here at Algebra with regards to math, who actually had an example for everything. Even the most basic stuff like numbers. Like, why do we have numbering? Why would we ever need numbering? Well, we think the initial reason for that was because your livestock became too big, right? You had too many cows, you had too many foxes or whatever, and you had to count them. Previously, you would count them using rocks or sticks or something, and then people invented numbers.
Okay,
Practical application yet again.
And so this is where we are starting, because what we are talking about right now is the thing that I usually like the most and that I usually recommend to Vedran that we need to talk about, and this is motivation. Because I'm usually not interested in technology. I am the technology guy. I like the technology. But I'm always interested in trying to understand the reasoning and the motivation why people do the different things. This is the first thing. And my personal drive is to try to understand why somebody who is successful in what he does is successful in what he does. So I'm, for example, right now, I think that probably one of the most influential people in the whole world is Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say I don't like the music. I have no feelings about the music. But everything else around Taylor Swift is amazing. The way the marketing is done, the way the concert is done, and so on. So when I say that I'm interested in Taylor Swift, I'm not interested in the music. I'm interested in the whole thing and the paradigm on how the business
This
is
is such a familiar conversation, the algorithm conversation.
So I want to understand the algorithm. I want to understand how this thing is done and why she is successful. Because the music is not that good.
It is.
I mean, it's popular music.
Yeah, the markets tell us the story.
There were artists that made better music. Sure. And I think that right now the algorithm is what is interesting to me. So what you're trying to what we are dealing with here, you're trying to go from one side of the motivation thing. I'm going to from the other side, but I'm trying to understand what motivated you after the PowerShell. So the PowerShell was complex. It had real world implications. What then?
I think that you should pause that for a second, because the reason why he started doing PowerShell is also very interesting. I seem to remember that. He challenged himself to do a project for one of our courses in PowerShell just because so.
No, it was a joke, actually. It started off as a joke with one of our former assistants.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, like he presented the project we had to do for that semester. And I was like, okay, can I just do this in PowerShell so you don't have to grade it or anything? Oh, yeah, right. Like you're going to make a PowerShell script that's going to configure everything. It was I think the scope of it was like configuring an Active Directory domain,
File share,
file sharing,
NTFS, DHCP,
certificates,
DNS, certificates, DNS,
a web
DHCP.
server
Yeah.
that you have to sign with the internal
Reboot.
certificate and whatnot, all of that stuff. And I don't know, it's just some divine intervention. One night came upon me. I remember we were playing CSGO. I was addicted to CSGO
Of
at that
course.
point. And after CSGO, I just said, let's see, how do I even begin?
Okay, but from my perspective, I think the PowerShell also started as a joke. So I think that you were on the on the right part. Because when I was, I actually, since I have to explain to people what is the difference between the PowerShell and the Bash, I think the PowerShell is just the way that Microsoft had to solve some problems. So they just basically improvised along. So I see that starting a ridiculous project because you want to is the way to learn PowerShell. Because the PowerShell itself was a ridiculous project that started because they had to do it.
Yeah, because Visual Basic just wasn't cutting it.
I mean, it wasn't, and it still isn't.
Yeah. I have this year has been a living proof for me that PowerShell is not only alive and kicking, it's moving forward at an enormous pace in terms of acceptance still. 15 years after.
Visual Basic has never been closer to death, given the fact that we introduced Python in Excel. So, I mean, what are we going to use Visual Basic for anymore?
Officially, Visual Basic has been dead from 1997. So
it's still alive and kicking.
It's a zombie. It's a zombie that
Keeps on giving.
Keeps on giving. But the way, if you remember, back way then, we could do inline assembly in C. I wouldn't be surprised that PowerShell is going to soon have inline C# code that you could actually put inline in the PowerShell scripts directly as part of the C# code, so that's going to be compiled.
That's actually not that difficult to do already.
I don't think if you can do inline code, I know that there is a way for you to call like Windows API stuff.
Yes.
From PowerShell. It's a different syntax. But
yes, but you can you can basically call functions, and the functions can be compiled from C#. Yes.
Yeah.
You can call DLLs.
I mean, PowerShell
right.
at the end of the day is .NET.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so cool. The reason I took it by heart that easily and that quickly was probably because it's object-oriented.
Of course. Always the same old story.
Through high school, as I mentioned, I learned programming by creating a vehicle class that would then be inherited into a car class that would then be inherited into, I don't know, a Ford class, a Volkswagen class,
and the color
whatnot.
and the engine and the this and that,
And
which was immensely boring.
The same boring example that you go every time you like take up a new programming language. And so, I mean, yeah.
And so now you have a user object that suddenly becomes an individual user, and then
group object that becomes a group.
Honestly, right now that's completely useless for me. I have no idea why did we ever come up with object-oriented programming? It doesn't make any sense to me anymore.
Why?
I don't know. I reason functionally, I think functionally, and I architect my systems functionally. Everything is based around functions.
I understand you.
No, we're with you.
Because data goes through functions.
So you became aware of the matrix of you called it functions, I called it procedural IT.
Procedural. Okay, yeah. I guess that's the same thing. Because having data as your center point of every system, although possible, obviously we've been building object-oriented platforms for decades now, to me doesn't make sense anymore. What does make sense is having procedures as your center point of each system, right? That data goes through.
Mm-hmm. So that it becomes valuable.
It becomes valuable. You add value onto your data. And the only concept of formulating data in a specific way that you would probably ever need is custom types.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
Sounds reasonable.
And the thing is that probably the main reason that we are not dealing with objects when we are thinking about how to program is that we as people do things. We don't structure things. We do things. We're trying to do something. Structure is the result of doing, but we are not structuring because we need to do. We do, and then we create a structure. And so I think this is the reason why objects by themselves are just an abstract thing that works, but more or less doesn't make sense for most people. I don't have any problems with objects, but I see that they are so limited in scope precisely when it comes to Active Directory, because in Active Directory you don't have that many different types of classes. You have some classes, but there's
You don't need anymore.
you don't need more. Don't need more than what a couple of dozen classes, and so that's it.
Yeah.
And then this becomes a burden. It would be much easier to just skip the whole classes thing and do it in a different way. And I think that this is the reason why LDAP is staying the same for the last 30 years, because they reached the peak usage of classes. And now what they can do is they can just discuss what attributes they're going to use, and that's it.
And we're afraid to change it because it'll break everything.
Yes.
Because we still don't understand
and
how
I think
it
that
works.
people should be afraid of classes. This is completely normal.
And also LDAP
Yes.
Yeah,
LDAP is
by extension.
extension.
LDAP and parallel, this is like magic. This shouldn't be touched. There are people who know it or claim to know it, and that's it.
I have a PowerShell class yet again this week, and I have 9 people from a certain bank, a big one, and we touched upon the topic of parallelism in IT, specifically in PowerShell. So I had to give them a sad story about the reality of that if they don't want to.
I mean,
break
it's a
stuff.
short story.
It's a very short. Don't do it. Let's go.
It doesn't even work properly. It's not meant to be used in parallel. But if you really need something done in parallel and you're using PowerShell, probably you're not using the right tool for the job.
Yep. That's
Or
also
you
true.
completely miss the point and you're not doing the job that you should be doing. The only thing that is worse than parallelism in PowerShell would be recursion.
Recursion in
In
general.
PowerShell. No, in PowerShell. You
Agree.
you can do it if you need to, but you shouldn't ever come to a point where you need to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's like hammering down a nail with
A sledgehammer.
Bulldozer. A
with
bulldozer.
a
Bulldozer, yeah.
bulldozer, something like
Yeah,
that.
That's good. Okay, so we exhausted the topic of PowerShell for the time being. So it was networking, then it became a little bit of Windows mixed with PowerShell, and then
Then he gave up on objects, and this is the logical step before you go into Bash.
Actually, objects were later. I gave up on objects far in the future, but I remember a certain
But
professor.
your faith was
Written in the stone.
starting to get wobbly when it comes to objects.
It-
So you
it-
started experimenting with the different drugs like Bash, like
Z-shell.
Z-shell, scripting, Linux, and so on.
That's right. And I still remember precisely one sentence from my dear professor. I was peak PowerShell commitment. Windows is the greatest thing ever to happen to humanity, like Microsoft is the greatest company ever. Like completely frozen face, said something along the lines of, I hope that you're aware that your future is in Linux, not on Windows. Like, you have to remember, I didn't know anything about Linux at the moment, and I was peak Microsoft head. And he just blatantly, like, I hope you understand that your future is in Linux.
But
yeah, in
this-
front of everybody else.
In front
but
of the
this
whole
is
class.
not. But I'm as a person who has seen this a couple of times being done by him, and I did it a couple of times. People usually, or I usually consider Windows as a kindergarten. You start to learn how
Stepping
operating
stone to growing up.
so you need to learn how operating systems work. Then you take Windows, you try to learn how they work, and then you graduate to an actual operating system, like Linux. And this is what has happened to almost exclusively everybody that I know that switched to Linux. And this is what is happening to Microsoft now.
It's actually a part of the Phoenix story, if you know the metaphor of a phoenix from back way then. You learn something, then you crash it all to the smallest pieces, then you start relearning a couple of times, and then you get to certain conclusions. That's exactly what happened to you.
It is.
I was just a sledgehammer, nothing else.
So you were peak Windows guy. Then what?
Then he said my prophecy.
Okay. But then why did you follow it?
I don't know. That's
To this very day, he
to
doesn't
this.
know why he...
It was again a divine intervention.
No, it was
So
a leap of faith.
CSGO and then?
It wasn't. It was a leap of faith. That's what it's called.
It was probably a leap of faith. I mean, to be honest, it was more a combination of different situations that I was in, work related, and
€3.5 work related.
€3.5 work related.
And you had me as your assistant on the exercises. So I also did the thing on you with Linux, because I was always trying to explain why Linux is better than the Windows.
I'd rather not recall those times. It was very stressful for me.
It's very, very fun for us.
It was very stressful for me to attend each labs because of you, but
Because he was trolling you constantly.
constantly.
Yeah, he's good at that.
From the very beginning to the very end. But it was fun.
It's a let's say some kind of a prearranged, no discussion routine of good cup, bad cup between us. That's always been happening.
But
Or in this case, it was bad cup, bad cup.
It
but
was bad.
still,
the problem
still the
is
same
that
thing.
when it comes to dealing with Windows, there are no good cups.
Come on, stop trolling. He is the topic, not you.
No. But what I wanted to say is that I always try to make a point of trying to push people into the non-comfort zone when it comes to something, but not too much.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. Rip the band-aid right now.
He's the one who's going to try to be exactly the opposite.
Much less subtle.
On the other hand, just as a side point, and I'm going to say something that is completely unrelated to both of you. I had exercises this year when I was giving an example of how authorization works in a hospital environment and whatnot, and I actually made a person from my group sick, because she had a problem with talking about blood and talking about hospitals, and for some reason my example triggered her to just
Almost traumatic experience.
almost traumatic experience. And I said, okay, I should be paying more attention when I'm talking to students, because sometimes they are triggered by things that are normal and normal usage cases or normal scenarios for me as a system administrator. And this is one of those things that you need to pay attention to.
Well, that
Self-awareness.
means your storytelling must be really good then. If you can trigger
Mike,
someone.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, yes. In this particular case, yes.
Yeah. He has a lot of experience with those because he worked for various types of hospitals for better part of 2 decades.
I had different experiences with different types of industries, not only hospitals. I was working in the hospitals. I was working with the entertainment industry. I was working with the financial industry for a while. So I had experiences across the industries. And what I'm going to say is that we are all lucky to be alive. Because when it comes to low-level administration, they're all the same. Crappy and a small bunch of talented people is keeping everybody alive when it comes to finance, when it comes to telecommunication, when it comes to hospitals, when it comes to anything.
It's always the same story.
It is. Every time I hear like some older story, especially from finance, I get goosebumps all over my body, because you always hear like, yeah, you see that system, that core of the entire world's financial system, it's written in a programming language whose native programmers either don't really exist anymore, or at best case scenario, they're retired.
And there was a Reddit thread that was mentioning a guy who said that the most important piece of software that he ever wrote as a developer was when he was an intern in a bank, because his software was supposed to be a test software for something, so a test module for something, and became the cornerstone of some stock manipulation data thing. And this was done as a thing that he did in 2 weeks, and then he left. And then he realized 10 years later that his software is still running on the mainframe and is still being used in production. And then
Sounds familiar, huh?
And then he said, this is the thing that I'm both amazingly proud of and amazingly scared of. Because this is a crappy software. And but it just came to be. They said, okay, we are going to use it. And as the saying goes, when it's in production, you don't change it.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yes, so we agree on this. Okay.
Okay, networking, Windows, PowerShell, Linux. We are at Linux.
We are at Linux. What happened is through RHCSA, so the Red Hat Certified System Administrator certification that I had the ability to acquire through our college. One thing led to another. I got into a position at IBM working as a Linux system administrator, which is, I think it was barely a year after you spoke my prophecy about my future as a Linux admin. And it was barely a year after that I got a job as a Linux admin. And I spent not even 2 years at IBM working as a Linux admin.
With some of my previous students.
With a few of our previous students as well. And it was the greatest time ever. I learned so much. I was on a huge project. I had incredible senior engineers in my team. I learned a lot from them. I learned a lot about huge scale projects. It was really something else. It was a completely 180-degree turn from everything I knew before. Because when I was like a Windows admin or administering primarily Microsoft products, I was always dealing with end clients. And for people that aren't in IT, you never want to deal with end clients because it's, for some reason, we can't understand what end clients want. And for some reason, they can never really explain what they want to us.
It's a meta language difference.
It's
I run into that every single day.
And it's so frustrating because you know it's happening and you can't fix it a lot of times. And it's not that the person doesn't like you or you don't like them. It's just you are completely wired in different ways and you can't come to even terms on anything. And when I got to administering Linux, I was, for the first time, my end clients, my end users, were other engineers, other admins. And
they spoke the language.
They spoke the language, and it sped up my processes. It sped up everyone else's processes. And it was incredibly fun because for the first time, there were no communication blockers in my work. For the first time, I was able to concentrate on work and not on communication.
So basically pure technology without limits that are just artificial things stemming from the fact that users don't understand the technology.
Yes. I mean, that sounds harsh, but it isn't. It's just...
No, it's realistic.
It's realistic.
I think it's
Statistics point to that.
but I have I'm going to go on a tangent again, and I'm going to say this. I had a talk with a very senior developer a couple of weeks ago. He works at the company that I sometimes work for, and the biggest problem that he has right now is to try to grasp what technologies emerged on the market in the last 5 years. Because what he did was he did a project that lasted 5 years, and he was stuck in a loop of a set of different technologies that were given to him. He had to do it in those technologies. He didn't follow anything that was happening on the market because he was stuck in the particular set of tools and particular set of the tool sets that he needed to use. And right now he has a huge problem with getting into terms with new technology and trying to make things work the way they should work when it comes to today's tool sets, today's stacks, and so on, because he doesn't understand what is happening on the market. And he's a very senior engineer. And I see this as a big problem because he suddenly became a user. He suddenly became somebody who is, I wouldn't say against new technology, but he doesn't understand the technology because he doesn't understand what is happening.
Yeah, the last 5 years were incredibly fast, and it actually sped up with obviously AI, but depending on the projects he was working on, if we're talking about web development, in the last 5 years it completely went upside down. And for like a few months, it seemed like every week there was a new framework or a new major release of already an established framework, and people just couldn't keep up with it.
My personal feeling is that we should be burning the frameworks that we have right now to the ground and just start from the beginning. But this is just me, because I'm seeking...
He is the revolutionary among us.
In this particular case, I'm not talking about revolution. I'm talking about complete nihilism. Because what I want to do is what I'm scared of is that people are stuck in different parts of those last 5 years, and they're picking different technologies from the last 5 years without any regards of what was happening after or before that. So suddenly you have a bunch of developers that are stuck in some part of the cycle, and they don't invest enough time and money into learning what is happening after that. So they are unable to keep up, especially with microservices containers, because they don't understand how to deal with those.
Okay, so going back to the original track, 6 times in a row. So it was networking, then it was Windows, PowerShell, Linux, Red Hat Certified System Administrator, started working for IBM. And apart from the projects and the stuff that you described, it was also one other thing that IBM offered you, if I recall correctly.
That's correct.
So give us a story about that.
The platform is called Red Hat Learning subscription. Red Hat Learning, yeah. It's a incredible platform on which you can access the entirety of Red Hat's knowledge base, as well as their exams and courses, right? You can read up on courses, you can do labs, actual practical labs, you can spin up your own machines in cloud and do practical guided exercises and labs to prepare for those exams, right? And there's obviously different levels of subscriptions. You get different parts of everything in a different one. But the one I had contained, I think it was 5 courses. You can do 5 courses over the span of 1 year. 5 courses, 5 exams, I should say, with 2 retakes, right? And the first year, I had it for 2 years. The first year, I completely wasted it. I didn't do a single thing. And then...
In your typical fashion.
In my typical fashion, just as I would normally. Year 2 rolls out, and I realize, like, my God, I can do so much with this. I can become an architect just using this single piece of incredible source of knowledge, whatever. And one by one, I first got, as you have to, I first got the RHCE, the Certified Engineer certificate. And then I went on the longest journey I ever took. It was about 1.5 years. Rampage, OCD, complete focus on Red Hat and their learning. And it was both incredible and exhausting at the same time. But each exam took me just long enough for me not to burn out and to get that incredible reward when you see result pass in your email as a result for the exam.
There was a little bit of colleague bickering as well, and a little bit of internal competition too.
A lot of it, which I'm forever grateful. 2 of my colleagues took the same path, and although we never mentioned it, obviously it was a race who's going to be there first. And In my defense, I was the last one to get it, but it doesn't matter.
Nobody cares.
In the end, no one cares about, apart from the three of us. And today, all three of us are certified architects.
And when do you need to recertify?
Next year, I think the first one expires in May. But
Here comes the circle. Welcome to hell.
you know, it's. I don't think it's worth it anymore. It would be worth it if I had a different job from what I did now. If I was focusing on those technologies, it would probably be worth it. If I was working for like a integrator company, then it would definitely be worth my time. But now I'd rather focus on the domain knowledge of my current work than spend another 300 hours I think I spent, or even more. It was like 500 hours.
You know that this is a low ballpark number for a single course that some people spend.
I know.
It's actually, there's a metaphor there that you fail to understand, because this is the thing that we need to explain to you, because you cannot put it into words, but you can feel it. It's just like with certain people and, let's say, drawing, or certain people and music, or certain people and writing. They're just able to do it. Some people just take a little bit of jump leads, with a car battery to jumpstart their, let's say, journey towards something, and then it just snowballs down the hill. And that hill is quite, high and quite steep. That's exactly what happened to you. You started with a little bit of something, then you added a little bit more of something, then it was a year and a half of doing nothing, as you would. And then you figured out that you have actual value out of the free subscription that you got, which you actually had to fight for as well with your managers and, their managers and whatnot. And then it snowballed into the first exam. Then quickly after that, it was the second and the third and the fourth. That's the metaphor that I oftentimes use. The algorithm is behind that, and your algorithm actually got upgraded to that snowball effect, which kind of compounds with time, because you had a purpose, you had a goal, you had a goal that you wanted to achieve.
But I just want to say one more thing. There is a way to overdo it.
There is.
When I was taking the trainer's exam, there was a guy who was holding 18 different certifications at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And what he said is that his main problem is that he gets to recertify something every 3 weeks. So basically, he's alternating between teaching and then recertifying.
Oh, he's the examiner as well.
No, he was actually just a trainer.
He was an examiner, he wouldn't have to recertify all the time.
So he needed to recertify a lot of the exams, because once you get into dealing with exams, suddenly those 3 years that your exam lasts.
It's 2 years.
2 years or 3 years, depending on the exam, but suddenly it just becomes a couple of weeks before the next exam expires.
That's right, yeah.
And he wanted to be up to date on his exams, because he wanted to do the teaching. He was doing the teaching basically in the States, and he was doing a lot of work. And when we were doing the teaching exam, so the teacher's course, he was doing it from his home office. Local time was something like 3 o'clock in the morning. So from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning, because he had another lecture that he had to, or another course that he had to deliver at 8 o'clock.
Perfect.
So he was doing something from 3 to 7, so that he can have a shower and then do the delivery for a different course during the day.
Love it, especially if it's like JBoss or something.
Super simple.
Yes, because you suddenly run out of normal, regular things to study.
And sooner or later, it becomes like SC Linux and JBoss and stuff that completely splits your brain in half.
You suddenly become a developer, yes.
Yeah,
You're semi on the path to doing that, by the way.
I guess so.
The DevOps. It's just dev.
So now let's stop talking about him. Let's start talking about the technology itself, because I want to
We're
ask
going to circle back to him, which you keep on trying to do, and I said the episode is about him.
So, but the episode is about him because he has a brain that I want to pick, and his brain is the brain that has certain things that I want to know. Where do you think that the boundary between a developer and the system administrator is right now? So we are talking about DevOps. Where is the ops stopping and dev starting, or vice versa? And which one is bigger?
Depends on the project and the company.
Okay.
The boundary depends on the project and the company, and the role depends on the project and the company.
And which one is bigger?
Depends. I
So
know.
currently for you, are you more of a developer or more of an ops guy?
I'm almost exclusively an ops guy
Okay. Right now.
right now.
And do you think that you're going to become a developer?
I don't see myself going deep down that rabbit hole, but you never know. I said I wouldn't be a lot of things that I became.
So how deep are you in programming in, I don't know,
Python.
Python,
JavaScript.
Ansible.
Nah, he's JavaScripting.
You just mentioned the two tech stacks that we use currently. So it's Python with Flask and Ansible as for infrastructure as code.
So basically you classify as a regular run-of-the-mill developer for the web when it comes to the web development.
I can do simple functions. I can do complex functions, but their performance will be really bad. I can do complex stuff with complete complex data structures really poorly.
So you're a web developer now.
I'm a web developer.
Yes.
I'm
This
a
is-
full-fledged
No, you're a fully fledged poor web developer.
poor web developer.
That's good.
all the web
And I'm fine
developers
with that.
are poor.
No.
I'm fine with that. There are especially senior developers that really understand data, that really understand memory, that really understand process clocks and stuff like that.
And you don't.
And I don't. And I don't see myself studying that in the
So
foreseeable
he
future.
has a. When is his graduate defense? In 10 days?
I don't know.
You're failing.
I see you. I see you in 5 years.
Do not say that.
No, while we were joking about this being an interview for the job, and you said, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" I see that you are going to do the full circle and do the SDN and do the network programming for development of certified networking. And this is
API
not
programming.
And I'm not joking. This is something that could happen to you.
No, he's not.
It might. It might.
Nope.
I really hope it doesn't. Because, I don't know. I feel comfortable where I am right now. I already mentioned. Through high school, I spent most of my free time programming and doing simple programs in all the different programming languages I could ever find. But right now, I know enough programming to understand what I'm reading. I can write simple programs that, again, work poorly, but they do their job. And I am really comfortable working in infrastructure, right? Most of my knowledge comes from infrastructure, from the ops part of DevOps. And that's why that this is the absolute
yes, but
perfect
do
position
you
for
like
me.
being comfortable?
I do. Don't you?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because everything that you did was up until now was basically challenging yourself not to be in a comfortable spot. You were just moving from one comfortable spot to another spot that is not going to be comfortable unless you do something. So I don't think that you like being comfortable. Nobody is going to change from networking. There are a lot of people out there who are going to be just completely fine with being able to configure a router or two, understand what Cisco is trying to peddle to their customers right now, and then say, okay, this is enough for me. I'm just going to be a senior networking guy and whatever, push a couple of cables and then do nothing. And you are not that kind of guy.
No.
And then going to Windows, you are also not that kind of guy because it's too simple. Windows is too simple. When it comes to Active Directory, it actually is too simple. Active Directory is complex when it comes to creating rules over rules over rules over rules and so on. But in its essence, Active Directory is simple. Linux is more complex. Ansible is even more complex. So I think that you're just challenging yourself.
I would heavily disagree with that. For me, Linux is way simpler. Because I can actually understand it. That's the reason why.
But the Linux is simple in the way that mathematics is simple.
Yeah, I can understand that because for me, mathematics is simple.
It's presentation.
It's exactly that.
I would call Linux would be mathematics and Windows would be economics. Nobody actually understands how economics works.
Yeah.
And they are trying different things.
Everybody
and then,
presumes.
So some version of Windows works. Nobody knows why. Then they create another version of Windows that doesn't work. Then they tweak. And they do something, then another version works, and so on and so on and
Which
so on.
version of Windows are you installing currently on one of our systems?
Windows 11.
No, on one of our systems, which is currently housed in our
I'm right now working on NT 3.5 on Alpha because he wanted me to install it, and then
We're having so much fun.
And I said that I wouldn't do it. He was trying to push me for the last 2 months or so, and then I actually opened the machine and started fixing it.
And he went down the rabbit hole.
So now I'm just waiting some parts for the alpha, the digital alpha. 2100, some parts to be delivered, and I'm waiting for them to swap out some parts that I have in the lab because I want this thing to work.
Yeah, we are doing something with it because we want to go back to software that works.
That's horrible.
Yes,
It's
I know.
not.
Yes, I know. I'm completely fine with horrible. In my one of my hobbies is being a ham radio operator. That's even more.
No, he likes chaos. That's it.
That's even worse.
That's even worse.
Yes, but
You gotta have a hobby.
once you come over, once you go over having to talk to your neighbors, why did you switch on and off all the electrical equipment that they have in their house? Simply because you just pressed send on your
Ham radio.
It becomes a hobby that keeps on giving. The only hobby that is worse than this is flying model helicopters. Do you know anybody who's? Does anybody of you know anybody who's flying hobby helicopters?
Nope. I know guys who are flying drones. That's
No. Drones are different because drones don't crash. Hobby helicopters. When it comes to old style helicopters, you have to keep under control all the time.
RC helicopters.
RC helicopters, yes. So basically, you have to keep them under control all the time. And the guy I was talking to, who is doing this for the last 20 years or so, said that from all the time that he spent flying his helicopters, he can, for every hour of work on the helicopter, he gets 2 minutes of flight time.
Worth it.
2 minutes of flight time. Everything else is maintenance and trying to fix things that he broke.
That's horrible.
So this is horrible hobby. Yes, trying to fix alpha is also horrible thing. But
it kind of works.
And my plan is to create an Active Directory on it, or it's not an Active Directory, but it's going to be a primary domain controller on it, so that I can do the NT4 style domain and try to get it working. I'm not completely sure how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try to do it.
You can write a medium.com article about that.
Yes, but I first need to find a way to make it work. Right now, I'm stuck at boot because
that's what the podcast is all about.
I have a smallish problem with SCSI disks that are 30 years old and that are not booting. This is the one thing, and the other thing that some of the things that the manual says to do are completely illogical.
The worst part about what you just said is the fact that I know you're not thinking about iSCSI disks.
Yep.
It's actual SCSI disks.
Yes.
Dual
bus SCSI disks. I'm dealing with terminators. I'm dealing with SCSI IDs.
SCSI cables.
They are mechanical IDs, so I need to actually put the jumpers to set the IDs and so on and so on.
That's for us. That's IT.
I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting on a SCSI cable to daisy chain the drives.
I mean,
Why do you look so surprised?
But it's just a thing. Let's ignore this. Let's talk about you
sure.
For a change.
for a change.
For a change, yes. Okay, so IBM, Red Hat Certified Architect. You also then signed into our graduate program, which was
That's right.
basically roughly around the same time when you achieved certificate plus minus. Not everything in life is measured by when you signed in for something, so I'm aware of that. You've spent the past 2 years and a little bit more basically finishing the second part of your college education, which is going to be, let's say, which is going to reach its natural conclusion in a couple of weeks, which is going to be you failing, of course, as we know. And, watching all of that happen as a partially bad, partially good, partially comedic, partially sad rom-com movie ahead of us, without having access to a lot of popcorn, from my perspective, has been immensely, let's say, not only interesting is the wrong word. It's been really rewarding, actually, to watch all of that happen. Because at times, we wanted to, break your face. Human talk, not professor-student talk. At times, we just wanted to, tell you stuff that you don't want to hear, which we did often, especially him. At times, we just wanted to kind of encourage you to do shit, which you, most of the time after the initial introduction, actually did, with no hesitation or additional questions, to your credit. Again, leap of faith. What's next?
Next, I want to stay a part of this thing here. Whatever
This and thing are.
whatever this and thing are, I want to stay at this college for as long as I can, for as long as you'll have me, in whichever role is possible and needs to be filled, because I love everything about this. I love the ambience. I love the people. I like the building. Like, just being here feels comfortable, feels nice, and hopefully I'll manage to do it.
Okay.
Because of the fact that you're going to fail the examination in 2 weeks? No, of course.
Let's keep his trolling at bay and just say one thing. You do realize that once you pass the examination for the teacher's examination for the Red Hat, that you are going to have to recertify everything that you have done to this point.
I look forward to it.
Then it's going to actually make sense.
It's gonna make sense and it'll be valuable.
So I'm just going to go on a limb here and say that I'm willing to spend some money with you to pay for him to finish the certification for the teacher.
So that you don't have to.
No. So he has to recertify everything.
Oh, you
else.
want to watch the movie again?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I agree with you. We
Another
want to
year
have the
and a half.
popcorn and the movie.
When you mentioned the rom-com, I was just
Yeah.
thinking about You Got Mail.
You got mail. That's exactly that. Yeah. Or no, he's going to be the mixture of You've Got Mail and Sleepless in Seattle. That's what's going to happen.
The best part about it is some of the exams I took, some of the certifications I have, are now discontinued. So I have to.
Yes.
Choose some
You learn new stuff.
I have to learn new stuff like virtualization. I
Yeah,
don't think
no
it's
more.
no longer a thing.
Yeah.
It's containers were previously 2 separate exams. Now it's only one single exam. Oh my God!
I have other news for you, but unofficially, just going to tell you that the exam that I had to take, and the exam that he had to take, were different, probably in one order of magnitude when it comes to complexity. The same exam, CE. So
the engineer. It
yes.
is. Yeah.
Yes, because the what they are doing right now is I like what they are doing right now, because they are making the end result much harder to pass, but they are creating an environment where you can actually depend on the exam that is going to be much better than it was before, and it was a great exam before. Basically, what they are doing is exactly the opposite of what Microsoft is doing.
Okay. That is good.
They've been doing that for years now, But I agree. I think this makes more sense. I also took the newer version of the certified engineer exam, the Ansible one, and it was fine. It was okay.
You think that that exam is more difficult than the older versions with
No.
with services, or
It's simpler. It's easier. But it makes more sense.
if you start from zero, it is. If you start from our standpoint, as people who used to do service configuration manually, then I don't think the Ansible exam is any easier than the old one. I do think I have a little bit of a more experience in this to say it out loud. I don't know. Of course, I can't go into the details for obvious reasons. But if you start from scratch, the path that Red Hat has right now is definitely a little bit easier. Because those service-based exams of the past, they were quite a bit more complex than the stuff that we have to do. Actually, to that point, the system administrator exam, which used to be a technician exam in the good old days, that exam became indescribably simpler with time. Because the what used to be the technician/system administrator exam in the older versions was much more difficult than the one we have now. It was already troubleshooting back then. Installation from scratch, troubleshooting of services, all of that was already present.
Yeah, now
there.
it's the basic setup of like
Yeah.
users, directories, and
But the only, let's say, more complex task in the exams nowadays, you can read about that on Red Hat's website. There is an exam blueprint, so we can discuss that. And it's a part of the courses that lead to the exam. The only, let's say, a little bit more of a challenging part for, let's say, us, is the container part of Podman. Everything else is super straightforward.
And I think that the biggest problem that you have when you're dealing with Ansible right now, and I'm not talking about only the Red Hat exam, but in general, is because is if you learned Ansible when it came out, and when you try to switch to the current version of Ansible, how the Ansible is looking right now, it's difficult if you don't have continuous experience running the Ansible environment.
they did the typical Red Hat thing. They did this with OpenShift as well, major version 3, where they took a project that was basically open source, and they realized, oh, hey, we need to throw a bunch of new features on top of this, and they had a new minor release every 2 weeks. Like, you can't sustain that model forever, obviously.
OpenStack is even worse example of that.
OpenStack is even worse.
Yeah.
By the time they got to OpenShift version 4, major version 4, they kind of got to their senses, and now it's a more regular, healthier release cycle than it was before.
Yes,
the
but-
same thing happened with Ansible.
Yes, but I think that the thing is that if you are trying to pass Ansible testing, and you are not day to day in the business of running Ansible scripts, and you are not current with updating
Playbooks.
the scripts that you are going to have a much harder time to try to pass it. But it's the same with all the other technologies. As we said, in the last 5 years, everything changed. We were experimenting with Ovid. Ovid should be simple.
Mhm.
Uh,
Apart
It's-
from the fact that it doesn't work properly.
part of it's just
It's picky.
it's
Very.
picky about his friends, and he doesn't like to talk to anybody. Yes.
Yeah. That's
Yes,
exactly
but
the
this
good meme.
the thing is that I've been dealing with the Ovid for the last 5
years.
years,
Yeah.
6 years or so. It used to be a pain to put up, but then it worked. Now it's amazingly simple to put up,
And quick, actually.
and
Fast.
then you realize that a bunch of services don't work as they should be working, and then you start to debug ad infinitum, basically. You continuously need to debug the thing because they're trying to push parts of the OpenStack into Ovid.
Yeah.
They are not trying to. They're not even trying to hide it. So the Cinder is moving to Ovid. That's it.
Is
They're-
it containerized?
the sort of kind of yes, more the right now there are different ways to do it, but yes. But the thing is that you don't care anymore about the installation, because back way then you needed to care about the installation because the installation was the hard part. Now the administration is the hard part, and installation is simple.
It should be the other way around.
It should.
Yes.
Maintenance should be relatively easy.
In IT, it's not.
But in
I'm
IT,
just
it's
It's
Life
not.
cycle management is
I'm
the
just
worst
going to
part.
say
of IT.
that what I really hated, and I'm still hating it, in the official documentation, first, documentation is not up to date. And the other thing is that the thing that is probably the biggest pain in the ass that I have ever seen in any documentation is the thing when they say that you have to keep the certificates up to date, because if you
They made some changes to that, by the way. You should
yes,
read
yes,
on
but
that.
in the official documentation they say that if you manage to let the certificates on the nodes expire, it's much easier to just wipe the node and reinstall it, because it says that the trying to reconstruct the certificates model is prone to errors and difficult to do. So this is the official documentation.
We like that.
So they are telling you that if you are installing Ovid, if you are not paying attention, your certificates are going to be the problem that you're going to be facing in a year or two. So what they did is they basically, on installation, they extended the time the certificate is valid, so that you have the time to change
How
it.
long?
Into, I think right now it's 3 years. It used to be a year, or it used to be more than a year, something like 380 something odd days before the certificate is expired. And then now I think it's 3 years. For some reason or the
The
other.
initial OpenShift certificates only last a day, and you have to confirm them, approve them, and then they last for a year, I think.
Yes,
Because
okay.
that's the way to do IT.
I mean, they're self-signed anyway, so who cares? Like, make them 10 years. Why not? What's the difference? The only reason they put self-signed certificates is so they can claim, yeah, it's all encrypted. It's encrypted data. So what?
I'm just going to go with. I think the overt is the thing that right now is going through so many changes that nobody knows what's going to happen next. And the reason is because they're trying to make overt a subset of OpenStack. And they're basically creating a subset that is going to be just a simpler OpenStack with most of the services not present there, but the relationship between the services is going to be there. So you're going to be and you're going to end up with a subset of services, and that's it.
Some of them do make sense. Cinder does make sense,
Yes.
realistically. But Neutron, God forbid.
But why? We want to have SDN on
But we don't
virtualization.
need SDN on
Of course we
virtualization.
don't. It's completely beside the point.
But I think that running OpenStack in such a way that we install OpenStack, then install OpenShift on it, and then installing OpenStack on top of it, and then calling it under cloud, over cloud, and
Semi-cloud, hinder
and
cloud.
then telling everybody that this is the simplest way to run the thing
And the most efficient.
and the most efficient way.
And then people ask me why I prefer VMware solution.
And then you, for some reason or the other, log into Node and list all the network adapters to see what is happening in the network side.
Has like 950
Yes, there is pages and pages and pages of bridges.
of bridges, different VLANs, VXLANs.
Yeah.
Yes, and so then you suddenly realize, okay, I have absolutely no idea how this stuff works.
Yeah, it's just like spinning up a computer. I mean, we can sort of understand how a simple computer works, but you don't understand every part of it. You don't understand every piece, every solution to every problem they had in a graphics card, but you can understand it. This you cannot.
I was talking to a guy because as he said, I'm into the rabbit hole about alpha, and I'm trying to find some parts, and I was talking to a guy here who is a retired electrical engineer who was doing basically discrete electronics for his whole lifetime, and he said that he has come to a point when he was starting his career, the idea of him putting a computer together was something that was completely out of the idea. So he wouldn't be able to put the computer together. He said that the technology changed so much that putting the computer that was complex way back then is something that he could do right now in probably under an hour. with everything being just set up. Because he said that the technology itself is so complex with the computers that we have right now that creating a computer from 30 years ago is just more or less just getting the Legos together and just putting different blocks together and connecting them. He wouldn't be able to do anything about the computers today. And I think this is the thing that is waiting for us. AI is not going to make things easier. AI is going to just obscure the things that we are doing. You're just going to run into playbooks that are going to be written by AI, and they're going to be written badly.
Probably. And hopefully won't make up their own module names, like ChatGPT.
Yes.
ChatGPT actually made up, on a few different occasions, made up an entire modules and their properties. I was looking for a way to automate Network Manager CLI, the NM CLI with Ansible. It completely made up properties that never existed.
But did they make sense?
Yes, I actually
Very compelling.
I copy pasted it into a playbook. I ran the playbook and just a bunch of red screen.
Yes, but
There's-
maybe the idea is that the AI is trying to push you to
To-
create your own modules.
No, it's trying to push me not to use Network Manager CLI,
Which is a smart thing to do either way.
obviously.
I'm just going to say Lightspeed.
Lightspeed.
Lightspeed, yes. Lightspeed is the solution.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you done?
Yes. No, probably not, but...
Okay, I'm going to kill you later. So we reached a point in which we discussed what is it that you want to do, basically. And so the thesis defense is soon enough. Then afterwards, we're going to figure out the way for you to become an assistant. We already had that discussion. It's already in the works. Do you see some kind of a, let's say, topic or an area or specific projects, let's say, that you would like to work on in the future? In terms of general IT, I'm not talking about the classes here or education.
Yes.
Is there a technology that's interesting to you that's just like an itch that is waiting to be scratched?
There are a few projects that I have in mind.
Okay.
One of them is some sort of a nice management tool for organizing your papers and references.
Are we talking about tech?
Yes.
Discussion that we had a couple of months ago?
Yes.
That came from that?
Yes.
Okay.
So over the past few months, we put up, I think it was 2 or 3 different papers, and I also did my graduate master thesis. And I was looking for a nice tool to manage my own references that would automatically format them in a way I like and keep them in a nice place. And I don't know, just a simple management tool for managing your references, right? And I never found one that had all the features that I wanted. So that's one thing. The other one is it will be a client application for mobile devices for what's it called? What's the R application for ebooks?
Caliber?
No. You have like Sonar for TV shows. You have Radar for movies. There's an R application for management of ebooks, and the client, I never found one. It doesn't exist as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to create that one. There's different testing that I want to do. Hey, I actually came back to networking. I want to test different features and performance of HTTP3. I'd like to implement my own HTTP3 in some sort of a lower programming language, lower level. I mean, it's probably going to be Golang or something that already has a prepared library for HTTP3. My goal is not to reinvent the wheel. It's just to get familiar with the new HTTP standard and its implementations.
The world needs the plugin for AI to be able to output tech. I think that this is what needs to be done.
Okay, that's just a copyrighted crazy Yasmin idea. Just a regular one.
Sure.
Go with it.
We'll make it work. It's things like that. Those three are in my to-do list for now.
So we are slowly moving towards networking. SDN is
It's first it's gonna be developer, and then we're gonna make a full circle back to SDN probably.
no, but you need to when you reappear as a networking guy, you need to be the developer for the networks. So you're
That's right.
going to be the one creating the complexity.
Yeah, correct.
So you're not going to be
You
solving
want
the
to troll
problems.
everybody around you.
So you're not going to
Absolutely
solve
do.
the problems. You're going to create the problems and then give the guys the tools to solve the problems.
He's still pushing his agenda of talking about, all of the complex things happening in life that are not explicable and whatnot, and politics and whatnot. So he is basically giving you the overview of a solution without the problem methodology.
Exactly.
So be the butterfly.
Butterfly.
Yes, the one.
Stop
that
with
moves
the HR
moves
metaphors.
No, be the butterfly that moves the wings, and then something happens on the other part of the planet.
Yeah, in some singularity that is not yet explained completely.
I really
Well,
like
real.
I like coding. I like having a simple data problem that I can solve with a programming language. It's so refreshing. When you go back from all the different features for your clients and whatnot, it's a simple. The problem begins with take a set of numbers X, and it's just numbers. They don't represent anything. It's not key performance index. It's not anything. It's just numbers. Dealing with numbers, for some reason, is really fun for me right now.
Welcome to the
used to be.
Matrix.
It never used to be fun for me, but for some reason it is.
So you heard it first here. I have another idea.
Okay, he's going to go become
No,
a maths teacher.
no. Nobody is ready for this idea. What we need is an AI aggregator.
No, we don't.
So we basically need a place where you can input a prompt, and then let all the AIs battle it out to
Yeah,
find
we
a
talked
solution.
about that actually.
If that doesn't exist already, I'm really
No,
disappointed.
battle it out for a solution
Battle it out for the solution.
between
So-
themselves.
Battle it out.
Yes. So I want the prompt that
He wants somebody to fight. He wants to have AI Mexican soap.
AI is talking to each
It's
other. and
AI
trying to
Mexican
solve the problem.
soap. That's what it is.
That's perfect. I
It
mean,
is,
if
for
it doesn't
him.
exist already, I'm kind of disappointed in my generation. But
What, to
sure.
make useless stuff?
Yeah. But there's a lot to learn there, obviously,
Or nothing.
or nothing.
Yes, but
He just wants you to create fun for him.
yes.
Yeah, it is that.
Okay, so let's get this thing wrapped up, because I think that we did a lot of brain picking for one interview.
Yeah, there is absolutely going to be a second one.
Yes, it has to be, but what we need
Yeah,
to
because
do.
he basically obliterated everything that I wanted to ask you. He constantly hogged the conversation with some other stuff, which was fun enough. It's what you do.
You just don't prepare for these things, because having
Yes, you do.
having an interesting guest and talking to an interesting person is not about having an agenda. It's
Tell
having-
that to Lex Friedman, please.
Oh.
No, it's not the wrong example.
I think it is. It feels like it is.
Yes.
Why? Please stop with your
Lennox
feelings.
Freeman always feels like wrong example.
No. He has the method to his chaos. That's what I'm talking about. And that's something that's very rewarding to see. We don't. We just have chaos.
Yes, but I think that the idea of talking to people is trying to have a controlled chaos that enables them to express who they are. I don't like pre-prepared questions that are written in stone or on iPads. So
Who says that there are questions written on iPads?
I'm just making excuses for what I did today. So.
He's good at that.
So, anyways, thank you for joining us, because this was one of those things where I started just on a private note. I started this thing tired. Now I feel refreshed because the talk was refreshing. Trying to talk to people who are interesting is refreshing for me. And this is the thing that I wanted to say. It's just simply talking to you and Vedran at the same time actually did make it feel like it is basically it's almost midnight local time, and this is what makes interesting conversation interesting. When you are able to talk into the night and not feel tired. So thank you for this.
Thank you for having me.
We're
There's
going
one
to
more.
have to have you again.
There's one more story that I want to share.
Oh, really?
with the
Audience.
the entire world, I guess.
Oh, Lord.
I told this story at least once before,
Okay.
but I do want to make this like a final storytelling for this because it really is important to me. It's a story about how I ended up in algebra.
Oh, crap. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
The first time I heard about algebra was actually in first year of high school.
Okay.
One of my friends' brother enrolled in our, I guess it's program, yeah,
Programming engineering. Okay.
program engineering course. He's, by the way, an assistant right now, I think, in
Okay.
the same.
Okay.
And I was first year of high school. I wasn't thinking about college yet, so it's just what it's like. It's a private college. Yeah, private college, this and that. As private
Free
college,
diploma, blah, blah.
as private colleges usually are frowned upon in Croatia, right?
Yeah.
So I took the
Not
same.
anymore.
Not
Still.
anymore, I guess. Years go by. I'm now fourth year of college,
No,
and
high school.
fourth year of high school. Sorry, and I see. I guess it's a pamphlet that was on the desk in my classroom for the Ninja Academy,
Oh, Digital Ninjas. Yeah.
Digital
I remember
Ninja
that.
Academy. It was the winter one.
I'm just going to interrupt you and tell you that I like that you're calling promotional materials pamphlets. That's fine.
Is it not?
That one was.
I mean, it was a pamphlet.
Okay.
And I remember seeing it was ethical hacking and programming were the two courses, I guess,
Yeah, short courses.
short courses. It was a 2-day course, both of them,
So the course during the winter.
during the winter.
So the winter academy. So
The winter
it's
break.
not the winter academy, yes.
And there were two other, I think it was digital design and marketing related, both.
Both completely uninteresting to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I enrolled in both ethical hacking and programming. Now, the thing is, all of those courses actually took place at the same time.
Okay.
Right? In our old campus, but in the same time. Luckily enough, I managed to get into programming in the second part of the week and ethical hacking in the first part of the week. So I was able to enroll in both, which was super cool, right? Winter break, I get to spend some time here. It was fun.
Instead of shoveling snow.
Instead of shoveling snow at
Because
home.
where you live, there's snow. Usually.
There usually is snow. And I remember arriving the first day, and it was Professor Papic, Silvio. He greeted us with, "Hello, colleagues." The first time I heard that word, like a colleague. I'm not a student anymore. I'm a colleague now. It felt so important right away, right? He's like, "Okay, how do you feel? How is everyone?" He says, "I'm all tired. I was up playing StarCraft like to middle of the night." I'm like, what is this? I've never had that type of experience with a professor or a
conversation,
teacher.
yeah.
Like, what? StarCraft professors? No, they don't do that. They just
Yes,
look
they do.
angry all day and show their what? No. Okay. Day goes by. I got introduced with this networking stuff, I was blown away. I had no idea how
It's
many.
a good thing that you didn't realize that he's also a professional pilot.
Come on, let the guy talk.
I'm not sure if he mentioned it.
Okay.
I don't think he did.
No, he does mention it.
He
Go-
might. Doesn't matter right now.
Yes. Okay.
What does matter is that he introduced us in networking. I was completely blown away. I had no idea about this entire world of networking that was behind my router, right? When I Google something. And it was fun for the first day. The second day, it was Professor Moric. It was more of a security thing, right? That was also fun, but I don't remember anything like specific from that day. Third day, which was the first day of programming, right? And we actually did Arduino. We played with Arduinos. As I worked with Arduino for my final thesis in high school, I was already familiar with basically everything we did, but it was still fun, right? I had a professor that I could ask some things that he actually had normal answers.
He knew.
Normal answer too.
He knew what he was talking about, right? I mean, it is what it is, a college professor. And that was the first day completely flew by. The thing that actually is like written deep in my mind and will forever remain there is the last lecture. It was Professor Jambic.
Programming.
And he got in the classroom, how is everyone? Da da da. And he said, we're just going to have a quick lecture that I give to my students on the 4th year of our college. So the first year of graduate studies. I'm like, oh yeah. I was like 18 at the moment. Oh yeah. I'm 18 listening to some 22-year-old like a lecture.
Okay.
Level lecture. Like so cool, so awesome. And then he starts explaining how usually a blue wire is for the negative pole and the red wire is the positive pole. I'm like, what? Nah. This isn't 4th year of college. This is like 7th of primary school. This is, what are we doing here? And he goes around like different types of electromotors, stuff like that. And in my ignorant mind, I couldn't understand that around me are people that didn't listen to this, right? I come from a technical background. I listened to this stuff for 4 years. Of course I knew it. Around me were people that studied languages for 4 years. They had nothing to do with electricity or thermodynamics or wires or electric motors or anything of that sort. Okay, and I actually interrupted him. I was so ignorant, I actually held up my hand and I interrupted him. Like, why? Are you really doing this in college? He's like, what? Are you actually explaining to people in the 4th year of college that the red wire is usually the positive pole and the blue one is the negative? Well, yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, we just mentioned this. Obviously, these people know it. But it's just to make the lecture like sort of whole, right? To wrap up a single topic from start to from the beginning to the end. I'm like, okay, but how does that make any sense? Well, it does, because we mention wires and batteries and electric motors now, and in like 35 minutes we're already developing a library for Arduino that will actually control this motor. It will power up like a simple device and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, but why do you go so fast then? Well, it's not fast. How is it not fast? Now you're talking about different colored wires, and in 30 minutes, we're already deep down in C++ and developing like libraries for controlling electric motors. And he said the one simple, greatest piece of wisdom ever. He said, look, no one cares if you can name 4 different types of electric motors as long as you know how to control one of them. That completely blew my mind. I had an epiphany at the moment, and I recalled everything I learned in high school. It was just different types of stuff. Different
approach.
It was just like belts, different types of materials, different types of pressure, different types. I had no practical knowledge of anything. I didn't know how to do anything. And he said, as long as you know how to work with at least one of them, the rest absolutely doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure that was the moment I decided that I wanted to be here, and it's been honestly it's been the same high, the same feeling ever since.
Yes, great story. Great story because knowing all those people that you mentioned, it makes sense. Because all of them are great educators. All the professors you mentioned are great educators. I was expecting another name. I'm not going to mention him because I know that we have a couple of other guys who would also do the things differently, also interesting. But having heard all of this, the thing is that okay, Vedran can try to tell if I'm wrong, but I don't know of too many people who are actual lecturers here who are not interesting on that level. We have a pretty much in every part of what we do, we have lecturers that are interesting. We are not a nice we are not an environment that is trying to culture people who are you would probably say old-fashioned. So every lecturer here is different in their own way, and this is the thing that I like about algebra, because I know that everybody around me is. I'm trying to find a word that is going to be nice, so I'm going to just say different than what I would expect. He needs to be special in what he does. He needs to understand what he does, but he also needs to be special in the way that he's trying to deliver this. So I'm not surprised. I like your story, but I'm not surprised because I know that all of the people that I know here are capable of doing this. So motivating people, because this is the motivation thing.
It is.
He does that. He usually creates problems for me because I need to do the lectures. He's the exercises. He's doing the lectures, and the lectures touch or some tangent touched whatever needs to be said, and then the rest is just him ranting about something else. And then on the exercises, I need to do the entire lecture and then the exercise. But this also makes it interesting.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that, but that's what makes you guys, follow.
But
what I'm saying.
Most of the time, the tangents made sense.
Yeah.
Right. We talked about like data center stuff a lot of times. We didn't have a single data center related course in our 6 year into the 5 years I was here, but we talked about like data center level networking, like VXLANs and stuff like that. We talked about data center level storage solutions, and it all, after a few years of these interruptions, we'll call them tangents, it all starts making sense, and you get a greater picture and an incredibly good understanding of how something works that you've never actually seen. Right? I've never been I've been in a data center, but I've never administered a data center, right? A physical location with this much physical storage, physical servers and whatnot. But I can sort of understand how they work.
But the idea of the whole education is to create a tool set for you.
Yeah.
It's not to teach you how to use all the different tools in all different ways, but just to create a tool set and say, okay, these are the tools that you're going to be using, and now go on and use them in which way, wherever you have to, because there is no way for us to cover all the different.
There is, but it's pointless.
No, but we cannot cover all the user scenarios.
No,
because if you wanted to be completely honest, the idea of having one of our students designing data centers for Google wouldn't be on my scorecard for the company Lotto. I wouldn't say that our student is going to become an engineer that is going to design data centers up to 4 million euros per data center, and that he's going to do 50 projects like this every year. And this is happening right now. So this is not something that we expect. It can happen. It obviously did happen. We are extremely happy about this, but we cannot do all the usage cases that you are going to be doing after you finish the degree, and we need to be prepared for this. Some of the guys who are going to finish here are going to be doing some. Wouldn't quite call it boring, but medium level administrative tasks in a bank or some other completely uninspired environment, because they're going to be happy with it. Somebody has to be an accountant, and those people are also happy. Some people are happy with numbers, happy to be an accountant and so on, but also some people are happy with jumping out of the completely functioning planes and being happy with this. So we need to create a tool set for both of those guys. We need to enable them to do what they want to do in such a way that they are able to do it.
Yeah.
And this is the idea of what we are doing.
Yeah, the idea of the tangents and many of those and the metaphors and everything else. And actually, I've spelled it out for you guys many times over. Is that our role is, metaphorically speaking again, to get you to the door. I'm going to show you how the floor looks like. I'm going to show you how the door looks, what the doors are made of. I'm going to show you the lock. I'm going to show you the handle. You're the one who has to pull it. If you don't, I don't care. That's up to you, because that comes from the standpoint of being aware of what awaits for you in the future business environment. You'll have to be self-centered enough to be self-driven enough to learn stuff without somebody having to whip you all the time. That's the nature of the IT business. But it's also related to much more pure part of every single person who is talented enough to understand that he or she has responsibilities, which you do have. Talents, and then along those lines, because of the stuff that you did and what you've become, you have also responsibilities. That's also Jungian theory. People who are talented don't have the rights or whatever, the bragging rights, what. Now you have the responsibility to extend the stuff that you were taught or that you learned along the way, to extend that as much as possible for yourself and then to pass it on to the others. That's what we do. And we have some level of knowledge of the stuff that you guys need to know. We can push you in the right directions, depending on your, at the end of the day, it depends on the stuff that you want to as well. I didn't necessarily care what you wanted when we met on the second year of college, because I knew we were completely lost. It was written in your face, and I didn't need a crystal ball for that, because it was very plain. You don't need to have a degree in something or NLP to understand those things after you've spent enough time in the classroom as we did. It's clear as day to see that. And with years of experience of doing this, as all of us did, Mr. Jambic and Moric and Papic and both of us and many others, you gain the ability not only to deliver the lecture and to deliver the message and to talk about technology and to tell the story of why that's important. You also get to deliver it in a sense of being, at least that's what I like doing. It's a 99% thing with 3 dots at the end, and you need to work out the rest of the 1%, which is the hardest thing ever in everything that you do. And as long as somebody is self-conscious enough about the fact that that's what I do it literally on purpose always. As long as somebody has interest to learn that last 1%, that person is going to be top-notch at the stuff in IT that he or she does. No question. That's why we have his friend in Google. That's why we have loads of students in Amazon and all of the other big companies all over the world. And that's where it's not the only reason, of course. It's a part of the reason, because you have to be somebody and do all of the things that you guys did to become that, of course. And we're just a part of the story. We are there for the transportation.
And this is the reason why
we are your not necessarily magic carpet ride, because that's way too generous. We are more of a bumpy, square type of wheels ride, but we are there for you to be transported to the door, which you need to open for yourself. That's what we do.
And what I do usually is to take his metaphor. When he creates the door, he creates the floor, He creates
The log, the handle,
the
whatever.
handle, and everything else.
He gives you the pick.
No, I do the Wild E Coyote thing with the Roadrunner and just paint a big tunnel and see who is going to hit the door without opening it. Because this is what we need to understand. We need to understand who is going to understand what the door actually is and what is the image that is on the door. And this is probably the hardest part. Because you have to see people running into the door head first without opening it, and then you're going to see a few of them opening the door correctly. And this is why we created an environment in which the private college stopped being something that you go to pay for the diploma and you started earning your diploma in. And this is what we do here.
Statistics points out to the fact that our passing rate is lower than the comparable, much older, with much more tradition technical colleges in the country, which means that the good old, story about buying a diploma, at least here, at least in our area of expertise, and I know by extension what happens in other areas of our business, that just doesn't happen.
But it's not that we are just...
It's impossible to pass year number one with that concept in mind.
Yep.
That's exactly why year number one in college exists.
I still remember a few colleagues that never really made it out of year one.
Yes, I know.
I wonder why.
A lot of them, actually.
Yes.
A lot of them never made it out of semester one.
Unfortunately, I know a couple of your colleagues that never made it out of year number one, and I keep seeing them on year number one. And this is one of those scary things.
And keep seeing them like echoes of what was supposed to be their lives but are not.
I never understood that.
I always tell
That's because you were lucky.
I always tell the people one thing. I want to see you. I don't want to see you on the same thing ever again. I want to see you once on every course, and I don't want to see you ever again. We can hang out outside of the college. We can hang out outside of the course and so on. But I don't want to see you on the same course ever again. I want to see you once. I need you to finish and just be done with it. Just go and be on your way. And seeing people who fail and try again and try again and try again, sometimes points to a person who is going to be able to finish it, but also sometimes it points to a person who is unable to finish it because he has some different issues that he needs to work out. And this is something that is my worst regret. I don't, he knows this. I have a soft spot for people who are unable to finish because I cannot help them. There are some people who are beyond help.
There are two things in that sentence that are describable by just disseminating into two different situations. There's a situation of people not being able to do something while terribly wanting to do something. So they have the drive, they just either don't have the capacity or they don't have it yet, which is also possible. It's just, the passage of time introduces some things in our lives without us not noticing. And yet there are other types of people who cannot be helped. Whatever you do is just not going to create any kind of desirable outcome. Again, along the lines of Jungian theory, there are people who just don't want to be saved. Yeah. And it's very difficult to live with that knowledge from our side of the story, because your natural instinct as a professor is always to want to help your student. But there are people who just don't know, want, ask for, or even appear enough so that you notice. And there's a lot of different levels in between, I'm afraid. People are complex beings. And the second part of that story is the fact that you guys are just incapable of communicating normally. Young people are oftentimes, how should I put this? Let's say underdeveloped in the sense of conveying their thoughts properly and their problems and whatever. I had a student, you know him, some 4 or 5 years ago, who paid for our tuition and therefore didn't have the money to buy food. What is the natural response of knowing that? There's only one. I tell him, here's the money, go to the store, buy yourself the best possible sandwich that you can have, and then bring some extras. That's the normal response, But that guy is in a position that he is in for a rational reason, which can be actually solved, And you can solve those problems relatively easily. And there are programs that we can go through with those types of situations. But if somebody just doesn't go, doesn't come to the college, doesn't attend lectures, doesn't do lab work, just appears on the exams, fails constantly, whatever, what the hell can you do with that person? Because you cannot establish any kind of repartee with that person. Therefore, you cannot know what that person has as a problem, potentially. Therefore, you cannot help them. And it's very difficult to let that go.
During my peak teenager crazy years, I think I was finishing my second year of high school, and I had an A. I actually had an A, and I got home. I wanted to brag to my parents, and my dad told me that there's no failing classes in our family. You fail a class on Friday, you're getting your work permit on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I hated him for that back then, but I realize
It's
now
an
that
excellent sports metaphor.
I'm actually super grateful for that right now, because you need to, like, someone needs to lower you when you're full of yourself. You need someone like that.
You always need somebody like that in your life.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
For you, that was us, partially.
Yeah.
I have a person like that in my life as well. Everybody needs to have that person.
Yeah.
At least one. Specifically, they need to have that person who has only their best interest in mind. That's when it works perfectly. When you know that it's not ego, jealousy, all of the other things. When you just know that somebody is giving you smack because you freaking had it coming.
and he doesn't care about it, but
Yes.
at the same time he cares about it.
Yes. Perfect mixture of.
So let's finish this thing off because we are running deeply into the second hour.
You're not.
Okay. Will you do the outro?
No, you will.
Okay, so once again, thank you. We did this 20 odd minutes ago.
He started it. I loved hearing his
No,
story.
but the thing is that we are going to continue right now because the thing is that we started on a thing that should be another episode.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if you didn't notice that suddenly he became the interviewer
Yes.
and you started answering questions.
Yes. Exactly what I wanted to happen.
I was expecting this to happen much later, but yes, okay. I'm fine with this. We are going to do this reverse psychology thing.
No,
we are
reverse interview thing.
Yes, and the other thing is we are going to have another guest next time that we are going to be here. So until then, I'm Yasmin, he's Vedran.
He's been Matej and still is.
He still is Matej. And we haven't introduced him up until now.
That's good. He's already internet famous, man.
And I think we shouldn't put his name anywhere on the YouTube.
Oh, obfuscate.
Yes, obfuscate him because he's going to be the target of all the interviewees and the HRs. They're going to just watch this thing and see how is Matej.
This is what security through obscurity is about.
Base 64 encode my name into
No,
the
no,
title.
no
to see
mentioning
who
him.
works it out.
Just a guy. We
A guy.
interviewed a guy.
That's awesome. Like a title of the episode. We interviewed our student guy.
A student guy, yes. One of the three.
It's awesome. One of the three. Yeah, the first of three.
So
Borg names or whatnot.
So thank you for being with us. I'm going to finish with talking direct to the camera, ignoring everybody else here. Thank you for being with us. See you next time.
Bye.